And our next guest speaker has been here to this church before, and by God's grace, she'll be here again. But she's perhaps the most recognizable face to be seen on news networks relating to the threat of Islam. And our next guest speaker has been interviewed on programs such as The O'Reilly Factor, Glenn Beck, Fox News, Hannity and Combs, and the BBC. Brigitte Gabriel has spoken before the United States Senate, the Joint Forces Staff College, the U.S. Special Operations Command, the FBI, and the Pentagon. Her work has been that on the international scale, bringing her before world leaders such as Margaret Thatcher, President George Bush, Ishaq Rabin, Shimon Peres, and Israel Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, and has appeared before the parliaments of both England and Australia. Brigitte Gabriel has been named one of the top 50 most influential speakers in America. She speaks 4 languages, Arabic, French, English, and Hebrew, and she is now the author of the New York Times best-selling book, Because They Hate. Please give a warm welcome to Brigitte Gabriel.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Woo! Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome. Thank you for the nice weather. Coming from the East Coast, I'm loving this weather today. I'm honored and delighted to be here. Truly, I feel I found a second home. I remember coming here the first time, and it was just meant to be how I ended up here last time. And I felt of all the places that I speak to, and believe me, I speak to thousands of people, I think this is my number 200 presentation in about 10 months. So I am home at Calvary Chapel at Chino Hill. Thank you. Thank you. We are here at a prophecy conference, and even though we're talking about Jesus, the end times, our spirituality, our connection to our Savior, but something very important that we need to discuss, that is the big elephant in the room, and that is terrorism, and how terrorism is playing in the end times. I mean, here we are seeing somebody like Ahmadinejad in Iran threatening to wipe Israel off the map. We are seeing dictators, we are seeing radicals acquiring biological bombs and nuclear bombs, hoping to bring about Armageddon so they can usher in the Islamic Messiah. And this is what is driving Iran, basically bringing about the Mahdi, because the Mahdi can only come after killing millions of people where blood can be shed, and that will usher his return. I'm going to get into that later on and tomorrow, but I'm going to start talking about terrorism from a very unique perspective. And I'm going to begin with, no matter what your political affiliation is, if you are a Republican or a Democrat, the issue of terrorism is an American issue. I want you to check your sensitivity sleeves outside the door, because what we're going to talk about may offend some people, may make some people uncomfortable, but I believe speaking the truth at such a time as this is something so important and so vital that especially we as Christians need to have our ears and our eyes opened. I come to the terrorism issue from a very unique point. Not only as an expert who follows the news, who studies it, who lives it and breathes it 16 hours a day, monitor the Islamic website. I spent hours a day inside Al-Qaeda chat rooms, Hezbollah chat rooms, Hamas chat rooms, listening to very difficult language and listening to them trying to plot us. But not only I'm going to talk to you as an expert today, but I'm going to speak to you about my background, my story, and why I am so passionate about waking up America and the Western world to understand what we are facing. I am so touched that every time I speak at a church, and especially, before I spoke at this conference, I asked Robin and the pastor, and I said, what do you want me to talk about? You want me to talk about North Korea, Iran, current, news? What subject do you want to talk about? And they said, we want you to tell our congregation again your life story, because it relates to today, and you will understand when I'm done, when I connect the dots, why it affects today so much. I come from Lebanon. Many people, when they think of Lebanon, they think Lebanon is just another Islamic country in the Middle East. Many people forget that Lebanon used to be the only majority Christian country in the Middle East. We were the only Arabic westernized Christian nation in the heart of the Arab Middle East. We were open-minded, we were tolerant. The majority of the people in the country were Christians when we got our independence from France. We were nice, we were open-hearted, we were open-minded, we were multicultural. We prided ourselves on our multiculturalism. In Lebanon, you used to walk to the church and hear the church bells ringing at the same time when you would hear an imam praying from a mosque and the Jews would be walking to their temples. Everybody lived in harmony. We had open borders. We welcomed everyone into our country because we wanted to share with them the westernization which we had created. The Arabs used to send their children to Lebanon to study in our universities because we had built the best universities in the Arabic world. Their kids would graduate and they would stay and work in our economy because we had built the best economy in the Arabic world and we didn't even have any oil. Lebanon became Paris, Beirut became Paris of the Middle East, the banking capital of the Middle East in the mid-60s. National Geographic magazine in 1967 had on its front cover, Lebanon, Eden of the Middle East. This is what Lebanon used to be known. Sadly, that's when I was born, and the country started falling apart since that time because of the Islamic influence. Because after 20, 30 years after we got our independence from France, we, the Christians, started shrinking and the Muslims started growing. And the reason why, we just don't have as many babies as they do. The most famous Muslim in the world today is Osama bin Laden. He is 1 out of 53 children. This is a little fact that the media doesn't share or talk about that much. Osama bin Laden himself has 27 children. Between the father and the son, they have produced 80 children. I do not know any Jew or any Christian that has produced 53 or 27 children, if they're willing to confess it in public, of course. But we, the Christians, got married until death do us part to one spouse. We have 4 children from the time our kids are born. Now we have 2. We're barely replacing ourselves. I'm guilty. I only have 2. From the time our kids are born, we start thinking what college we're going to send them to, what education we're going to give them, what lifestyle we're going to give them. The Muslims don't care. They have many children. Most of them, especially in the Shiite sect, are allowed to marry up to 4 wives at a time, and they do. And they have a lot of children out of every wife. By the 1970s, the Muslims in Lebanon became the majority, and we, the Christians, became the minority. But we always had the problem contained between the two of us because of our democracy. It wasn't until the influx of the Palestinians out of Jordan when King Hussein kicked them out, and Lebanon was the only country to accept the 3rd wave of Palestinian refugees, even though their Arabic Muslim brethren did not want to have anything to do with them. But because we were open-minded and fair and tolerant and we wanted to do good by others, we took them in. The majority of them were Muslims. They put their heads together with the Muslims in Lebanon and declared war on the Christians. Yasser Arafat tried to create in Lebanon a base from which to fight Israel, kill the Jews, and throw them into the sea. Something he tried to do in Jordan, but failed because of the dictatorship of King Hussein. We took them in. And Yasser Arafat was able to use our democracy, our open-mindedness, our fairness, our tolerance to topple our democracy.